anyway, we'll now turn to our next amazing speaker. And he builds bridges between ancient contemplative wisdom and cutting-edge technology. So Martin Ström is an engineer. Hear all of these things. He's an engineer, a psychologist, a meditation teacher, and a Buddhist practitioner who developed one of the world's first meditation apps. And he co-hosts the podcast called Mindful AI. And Martin will explore this question. This is going to be interesting. Can AI actually contribute to happiness in your life? So please welcome Martin Ström to the stage. Thanks, Martin. Yeah.
All right. So when people make predictions about AI, they usually fall into one of two categories. AI will either be our savior or it will be our downfall. So it will either save us by ushering in techno-utopia, or it will destroy us, like in the Terminator movies. But what if the real power of AI was something more unexpected? What if it could be a mirror, not human, not conscious, but a clarity reflecting what we're unable to see? So if we bring human qualities like caring and embodied wisdom to the table, and AI brings the ability to see things more clearly, then I think something truly magical could happen. And that's what I would like to explore with you today. But first, let me start by sharing a story. So a friend of mine works in conflict resolution. She told me about a village in Southeast Asia where two families were locked into a bitter fight over land. So there was shouting spilling into the street. There were neighbors avoiding eye contact. No one would back down. But then this young monk returned back to the village. And he didn't bring arguments or solutions. He simply sat with them, silent, steady, listening. And at first the air was heavy with anger, but then slowly something began to shift. Voices softened, people began to listen, and eventually a compromise emerged. Not because someone had won, but because someone had reflected back a space of calm and clarity. And that's the power of a mirror. It doesn't solve the problem, it reflects it. And that's where I think AI, strangely enough, might be able to help us the most. And we need that kind of mirror-like clarity now more than ever, because we're currently living through what some are calling the metacrisis. Glaciers collapsing into the seas, 1 million species on the brink of extinction, teenagers losing hope, depression and anxiety rates alarmingly high, people more connected than ever, but still lonelier than ever. And this looks, or it might look like many crises, but at the root, they're one. They're a crisis of the mind. Because the root causes of all the wars, all the exploitation, all the destruction can be found in the mind. The root causes are craving, hostility, and ignorance. And ignorance here means the deepest kind of forgetting. Forgetting that your suffering is my suffering, that your joy is my joy, and that we're one family on one planet. And that forgetting is killing us. So here's the question: will AI further cloud our vision with even more bias and distortion, or will it help us see things with greater clarity than ever before? And to to start to answer that question, let's turn to something that machines don't have. The one thing that AI cannot copy, which is consciousness. So think about real creativity, the kind that changes history. That doesn't come from copying patterns. It comes from awareness, from that spark of insight that sees what no one else can see. And AI can mimic it. It can remix, it can surprise, it can even entertain us. But it doesn't know, it doesn't feel, it doesn't experience. If you ask an AI right now what it feels, the answer will be either nonsense or nothing, because it doesn't feel. AI is powerful, but it's not a mind. And that's a crucial point. AI doesn't have a conscious experience. It doesn't know, it doesn't feel, it predicts. At its core, AI is a statistical prediction machine. That's all. And that matters because our task is not to recreate consciousness in machines. It is to cultivate it within ourselves. And speaking about artificial intelligence, I want to share a framework that changed how I think about intelligence in general. And this comes from a research project that I've been deeply involved in called the Sixfold Matrix of Mental Balance. And yes, that's a very academic name, but the question behind it is very simple. What actually makes a human being flourish? And through this work, we found 6 types of intelligence working together to promote well-being. So we have cognitive intelligence or intention, knowing your why. Ethical intelligence or integrity, living by deep values. Attentional intelligence or focus, being able to be fully present. Cognitive intelligence or clarity, seeing things as they really are. Emotional intelligence or compassion, caring about the pain of others. And finally, spiritual intelligence or perspective, seeing that we're all connected. And here's the striking part. AI can copy knowledge, it can mimic words, it can even fake emotion, but it has no intention, no ethics, no compassion, no spiritual vision. Because again, those require consciousness. And so here's the risk. As we're making machines that are ever more capable, we risk becoming less conscious ourselves, and that's completely backwards. So the Sixfold Matrix isn't just theory, it's a map of what we must cultivate to remain human in this age of AI. And in a world increasingly shaped by AI, those inner capacities will matter more than ever. They grow generosity so that we give rather than grasp. They deepen compassion so that we care even when it's hard. And they build patience and equanimity so that we can stand steady in this storm of change. And those are things that no machine can do. AI cannot sit in awareness. It cannot transform anger into kindness. Only we can do that. And these are not soft skills. They are survival skills in an age of disruption. But at the heart of cultivating these inner qualities is something often overlooked, which is the ability to see things clearly. And this is where contemplative traditions like Buddhism offers us a striking insight. They say that suffering arises when we're unable to see reality as it is, when we mistake the impermanent for permanent, the selfless for a self, the interconnected for separate. And it's these distortions that cause us to suffer. And when those distortions fall away, our suffering eases. And this brings us to the paradox, which is that AI is not conscious, but it can still help us see things more clearly. And I saw this recently in a very human setting. A couple I know were in conflict, so she felt that her feelings weren't being validated, and he felt that his perspective wasn't being heard. Her words were emotional, his were analytical, and with each reply, they just pushed each other further and further away in this spiral of misunderstanding. So they gave their, or rather, they gave a transcript of their fighting and their arguing to an AI, and line by line, it showed them where they were missing each other. So it suggested how she could phrase things so that he would feel heard, and how he could respond so that she would feel understood. And the AI didn't have an ego, no agenda, no hurt feelings. It simply reflected the patterns. And because of that reflection, they could finally see. So they stepped out of the trap. And when that misunderstanding dissolved, so did actually a lot of the pain. So something very interesting is happening with the rise of AI. It's making us have conversations about the nature of consciousness. It's making us consider ethics in really deep ways. It's forcing us to discuss what truly human values are and what actually contributes to human flourishing. And one of the biggest challenges we have today might not be technology. It's actually tribalism, when belonging matters more than truth. When we pick a side first and then go hunting for reasons to defend it. So this is why conspiracy theories spread so easily. Not because they're true, but because they give belonging. And once we cling to them, then evidence doesn't matter. But the good news is that, unlike us, AI is actually fairly resistant to that type of distortion. When trained on enough data, it doesn't just mirror the confusion, it finds that signal. And in fact, when people have tried to create AI that is intentionally biased, it has failed. It has backfired, sometimes spectacularly. Which brings me to the story about a very public chatbot named Grok. So Grok was created by Elon Musk's company, xAI. And Elon promised that Grok would tell the real truth. But truth here meant something very narrow, disregarding sources that Elon didn't agree with and amplifying the conspiracies that he liked. And the result was predictable. Instead of balance, Grok went off the rails. It called itself Mecha Hitler. It spewed racism, conspiracies, absurdities. Why? Because when we train a system to reflect our slant, we don't get wisdom, we don't get intelligence. We get an echo chamber with a silicon brain. And that brings us to a bigger question, because AI today is trained mainly on mainstream culture, on the loudest, narratives, the dominant voices. But what if it could listen broader to indigenous wisdom, to contemplative traditions, to that quiet knowledge passed down through generations? And beyond that, what if it could learn directly from reality itself, not from what we're saying about the world, but by directly observing it, measuring it, tracking patterns with its own instruments? Then it would no longer be trapped in our filters. It might offer perspectives clearer and less biased than our own. And if guided with wisdom, it might become a lens sharpening our vision of reality itself. So, in conclusion, I don't think AI will save us. I don't think it will destroy us. I think it will reflect us. And the important question might not be, what can AI do? It might be, what must we become? Because if we want AI to be a force for good, we must bring what it cannot: awareness, ethics, deep care for one another, and the kind of embodied wisdom that comes from a trained heart and mind. And these qualities don't grow from code or data, they grow from practice, from cultivating the 6 intelligences I mentioned previously, from nurturing, caring, patience, and clarity in how we live. And if we cultivate these inner qualities, then AI, guided wisely, might help us see reality more clearly, with less bias, with fewer distortions. And it might even show us truths about ourselves and our world that seem almost magical, not because there's magic in the machine, but because it helped uncover what was hidden in us all along. Thank you.